Stephanie Letty here, sending you a webinar for English 106.51 for Wednesday's class. A few things on the agenda for today. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about thesis statements. I also want to cover some rhetorical strategies other than ethos, pathos, and logos. And finally wrap it up by going through something that I like to call the OSIE method of analysis. So first let's touch on thesis statements. I gave you all individual feedback on your thesis statements via email. If you didn't get it, shoot me a note. One of the main things that I noticed is that a lot of your thesis statements did a really good job of identifying maybe what the commercial was selling or what they were trying to tell readers, but they needed to drive a little bit deeper into the actual analysis, which is the main focus of your paper. So I find when you're writing a thesis, it is always helpful. Go back to the prompt, so you may want to pull out your assignment sheet and remind yourself the prompt asks you to answer not just what group of people is being targeted, but how do you know? Is the messaging effective, and why or why not? That means that in your thesis statement, in addition to identifying the product or the company being represented and the target audience, you'll want to outline the main strategies you're going to discuss in your paper and tell us, well, was it effective or not? So as an example, for our Old Spice sample commercial, a thesis that just identifies the message or the product might say something like, the Old Spice commercial tries to sell its body wash, or the Old Spice commercial tries to convince us that using Old Spice makes you more attractive, which might be true, and that is the message that the ad is trying to convey. But what we want to do is dive a little bit deeper, pinpoint the target audience, and then pinpoint the strategies it uses. So we could say something like, the Old Spice ad effectively tries to convince young men and their significant others that using Old Spice will make you more attractive through its imagery, appeals to pathos, and clever setup. Okay, so in that revised thesis, I've, number one, made my audience more specific. It's not just viewers, it's not just people, it's a specific group of people. Number two, I've identified the main message, but then I've told you that it effectively targets viewers, or you could say that it successfully targets viewers, that it clearly targets viewers. Give us some kind of evaluation, your analysis of whether or not it worked. And then finally, the revised thesis statement tells me how the message was conveyed. It tells me that it was conveyed through the visuals, through the use of pathos, through the clever setup. So it does a little bit more than just say, here's the message. It tells me the how and the why. And those are the two main things your analysis should hit on. Not just what, but how and why. So be thinking of that as you work to revise your thesis. Any of you guys that want to send me a revised thesis statement for my review, feel free. I will try and get you feedback prior to your paper turn-in date, so the sooner the better. Another quick note on the message while we're kind of on this topic. As a commercial, the message to all of these is sell the thing. Convince people that my product or my service or my thing is better than everyone else's. You want to look a little bit beyond that to the subtext. So for example, in our Old Spice commercial, the message isn't just buy Old Spice. The message is this product will make you more attractive. So keep scratching below the surface. See if you can dig down a little bit deeper and get yourselves below the frost line, so to speak, for those of you that have ever planted anything or done any work outside. The second thing I want to talk about is rhetorical strategies. So we covered ethos, pathos, and logos pretty well in class. You guys did a good job of identifying those. One thing you might want to think about in your paper is to go beyond just saying, well, it uses pathos. Tell us how pathos is created. Tell us why it works or why it doesn't. In the Old Spice commercial, for instance, I might say it creates pathos through its use of the diamonds. Look at my hand, there's diamonds. So it creates pathos. It ties to that emotional desire for us to have nice things. And then I could say, and it works because he's not just, it's an effective appeal because he's not just saying, here's a diamond. It's literally dripping with diamonds, and it creates this image, it's a very attractive image of someone that's like very wealthy and very successful. And so tell us a little bit, not just what strategy there is, but how it's created, and that's very, very helpful to do in your paper. Now, there are definitely a lot of things going on in these commercials besides just ethos, pathos, and logos. So, let me give you guys a quick short list of some other things you might consider. You could look at the imagery. So that would include things like the color scheme. If you notice, a lot of ads for kids' products are often super bright. They use a lot of primary colors. Ads for things like scary movies or different products that maybe aren't as exciting or as focused as a younger audience are often a little more duller in color. They're not quite as vibrant. They maybe use more dark colors and more similar colors versus an ad for a kid's toy, which a lot of times has a lot of bright colors and a lot of contrast. So think about the colors, not just what they're used, but how it affects our perception of the thing, why that's so successful. You could think about the background or about the setting. So if you think a lot about, for example, Chevy or Ford or truck commercials, they're kind of targeted at people that would use trucks in a working life, so people that maybe farm or that work on the land, haul equipment, things like that. Well, their background a lot of times isn't like New York City, right? Their background is a farm or somewhere that's very natural, and they're like maybe a construction scene, or so the background is relevant to the product or that is being sold. It kind of, the background links itself with the target audience, and that can be very effective. You can also consider the timing of the commercial. Is it a very fast sequence of events? For the Old Spice commercial, it's very quick. It's look at your man, then look back at me, then look back at your man, then look back at me, and it's changing, and things are moving, and it's very, very rapid fire. Some other commercials, for instance, we talked a little bit about a Budweiser commercial with a dog and a horse that make friends in class. That one is a little slower paced. It's not quite as rapid fire. Going along with that, there's a difference between linear and montage. So a montage is where you have a lot of different images put together. A really good example of that is movie trailers. They take different pieces of the movie and they smash it all together in a minute or a 2-minute or a 30-second clip. So we get just bits and pieces, and it makes us really excited, and we're, ooh, I wonder where that comes in the movie, and ooh, that's an exciting part. And they don't give us the whole story. They just give us enough small pieces of the story to make us want to fill in the gaps. And that would be a montage. A more linear narrative is where we get more of the full story. So going back to that commercial, Budweiser commercial with the dog and the horse, that is a more linear narrative. It starts at the beginning when the dog's a puppy, and then it takes us chronologically through to when the dog gets adopted and the horses all stop the cars. And so that creates a different effect on the people seeing the commercial than something that's more of a montage. And so you could think about, well, how is the commercial set up? Why is it set up this way? How does that impact what we think about it? So again, answering how and why. You could think about the soundtrack. Is there music? How is it used? Where is it used? What's the effect? Some commercials may have music all the way throughout. Underneath, the perfect example is everyone's favorite super sad ASPCA commercial with the Sarah McLachlan song. So in that, the music underlays the whole commercial because that's what creates so much of the pathos. If you watch that commercial on mute, yes, it's sad because there's all these little sad animals and their little faces, but it's so much more emotionally connected when you have that music underneath it, and the words of the music and the sound of the music kind of resonates and drives home that message. Some commercials may use dialogue for most of the commercial, and then maybe at the end there's like a tagline, and that tagline has music underlaying it. So you could look at what are the choices made with regard to music if it's used, and how does that affect the commercial. The dialogue, the narration, is there dialogue? So discussion between the characters in a commercial, or is it just narrated where it's images and then there's someone talking over top of it? For example, the Reese's Peanut Butter Cups commercial, those are all narrated, and you see different things in the Reese's Cups and people taking bites out of them or whatever. and there's someone talking over that, and so that's a different effect than commercials where there's dialogue between two people in the commercial. So again, thinking about what choices were made, how and why those target the audience. And finally, with sound, there's two types of sound that can be used in a film or commercial or visual thing. You have what we call diegetic sound, which means it's coming from within the commercial. So, for instance, if there's a commercial, I've seen some commercials for drink products or whatever where maybe it's summer and everybody's at like a beach party or pool party and someone hits play on a cassette tape and then you hear music coming out of the cassette tape. So that would be diegetic sound. It's coming from within what's happening in the commercial. And then the opposite of that is non-diegetic sound. So it's layered over top of the commercial. It's not coming from within the action. So in our Old Spice commercial, when he's on horse and the horse kind of nickers or neighs, that's diegetic sound. It's coming from within. And then right after that, you hear the Old Spice whistle, which I'm not going to do. I won't do it very well. But you hear that whistle, and that would be non-diegetic sound. It's not coming from within the commercial. It's something that got layered on top of the images and what you're seeing within the commercial. And the final thing I want to just put out there is something you guys might consider would be, who are the actors or who are the characters from the commercial? Are they famous? Are they just kind of generic? So think about the impact. There's been a lot of commercials on TV lately with all the football games and stuff where you have famous former football players, former or current NFL players, college players that are promoting a certain product or service. So think about, okay, well, maybe there's a famous person in this commercial. Why did they put that person in versus someone else? How does that change things up? The person that is in the video is not a famous person or a well-known actor, then, why do you think they picked the actors they did? What's the image that they project? Are they younger? Are they older? Do they look like they belong to a certain demographic? So just think about why the people that are in the commercial were picked to be in that commercial over someone else and what they have to contribute to the commercial. Now that we've covered some different rhetorical strategies, I also want to go over something that I like to call the OSIE method for analysis. And this is just a way for you guys to kind of make sure that you're going through your analysis checklist and make sure that you're including all of these relevant pieces in your paragraphs as you analyze the commercial. So, OSIE, what does that mean? Well, the first one is O for observe. So you make an observation, tell us what you see. The second is support. So for support, you'll give us some evidence to help prove the observation you made. Then third, you're going to interpret. Okay, so you're going to tell us what's important about this observation that you've made and why that's significant, why that's relevant. And then finally, you're going to evaluate. So by evaluate, I mean you'll take the interpretation and the observation and you'll bring that back to your thesis and show us why this particular observation in some way helps to prove your thesis. So let me give you a quick example. So let's say that the thesis, or the thing I'm trying to prove, is that we need to turn up the heat. One observation you may make is that I'm cold. How would you support this? By saying that, well, I'm wearing a large parka, it's all the way zipped up, fleece hood around the face, got my cold weather gear on. You can interpret that by saying that, well, since I'm clearly inside a house, but I'm wearing an outdoor winter parka zipped all the way up, that shows that it's extremely cold inside the house. And as an evaluation, I could say, well, clearly, husband, we need to turn up the heat because it's so cold in the house that I have to wear a huge parka to keep warm, and that is a sign that something is not right here. So why use the OSIE method? It's a good way to make sure that you're getting true analysis in your paragraphs versus just summary, that you're telling us the how and the why instead of just the what. When you do the OSIE method, you have to have all four components. So if you just have an observation, that doesn't really help to prove your thesis. If all you're doing is evaluating, that's a good step, but I don't really know what you're evaluating. I don't really know why it's been significant or where you got the proof for it. So you need all 4 together in order for the method to work. You can't just use one or the other or 2. You have to have all 4. There is a practice document for this method on Blackboard, so more details on that are in the email. And you'll need to just email that to me when you're finished, and that'll give you a chance to work on using this method prior to turning in your rough draft of your essays. As always, feel free to send me an email or a message with questions, and I will see you all next week.